least they're joyfully not dancing out going, yay, don't have to listen to him. So. Well, this is one of those weeks where we get to stop and reflect and thank God. And so let's start off our time by doing that this morning, and then we'll get into this word together. Lord, if we went around the room, and God help us to do that at some point around the table this Thursday, that we do it even more often, to stop and reflect on your goodness and reasons for Thanksgiving, a holiday that gets sometimes trampled by the rush of the commercialization of Christmas. And so, God, you help us with that this week. Help us to slow down. Help us to appreciate how good we've got it, how blessed we've been. And so thank you, Lord. Thank you for this church family. As I said earlier, God, you know that there's sickness going around, and it saps energy. And so we need strength from you and help. And so we're asking that for our church family, and asking for a great week, a great day right now, a great time together in your word. And we pray all this thanking you in Jesus' name. Amen. Would you take your Bible? Would you take your Bible right now and open it to Joshua 11? Joshua 11. This is a blue-collar chapter, all right? What I'm finding as I do more study of the Word as the years go by, the Bible is more blue-collar than white-collar. And this church is a great representation of that, as even on a Sunday morning, I get here and the people that are starting to come and they're serving and they're doing things behind the scenes, it's a beautiful blue-collar thing that is happening. And I say that because that is what God has called us to. He's called us to work. He's called us to plodding along. And as this week progresses, there's going to be things that we're going to be focusing on. I mentioned Thursday, and Thursday, a few things come to mind for me. Is a great meal, usually. Every time. Save me there. Every time's a great meal. And football. And before there was kneeling for the national anthem, there was just great things that would come out of football. And one of them is a quote by Mr. Vince Lombardi, who said this. He said, "I've never known a man worth his salt who in the long run, deep down in his heart, didn't appreciate the grind, the discipline. I firmly believe that any man's finest hour, this greatest fulfillment to all he holds dear, is that moment when he has worked his heart out in a good cause and lies exhausted on the field of battle, victorious." And those kind of pictures, even though he's the coach for the Packers, I can appreciate what he says there. A little history. Thanksgiving is a national holiday in the United States, celebrated on the fourth Thursday of November. It's originated as a harvest festival. Thanksgiving has been celebrated nationally on and off since 1789 with a proclamation by George Washington after a request by Congress. Thomas Jefferson chose not to observe the holiday, and its celebration was intermittent until the presidency of Abraham Lincoln, when Thanksgiving became a federal holiday in 1863 during the American Civil War. Lincoln proclaimed a national day of thanksgiving and praise to our beneficent Father who dwelleth in the heavens, to be celebrated on the fourth Thursday in November. And so, as we look at Joshua chapter 11, we see much that the people of Israel are being thankful for. They're seeing God work. They're seeing God do taking steps with them, and it continues. We have one week where we're talking about these things of hailstones coming down from heaven. And then we have another time where the sun stands still. But I want you to realize that the Christian life is not usually sun standing still and hailstones coming down from heaven. Most of the time, it's the plodding along of the Christian life. And so if you're looking for that kind of experience each and every day, each and every week, where it's like, I want to have these stupendous, miraculous things that are happening, you are going to be let down. Or you're going to be looking for stuff that it just isn't going to happen that way. And the Bible, for the most part, is the blue collar plodding along. And it's okay. It's a test to us sticking to the stuff. It's a testament of what God can do as we do that. And so as we work through this passage together, I want to encourage you in the daily walk, okay, in this daily battle that we're in. Most of the time with us, with ourselves, with our stuff, and how God is refining us. He's conforming us to the image of His Son. And so point number one, if you want to take notes, there's a section in your bulletin to fill that in. Taking leaders. Look at verse 1 of Joshua 11. When Jabin, king of Hazor, heard of this, he sent to Jobab, king of Madon, and to the king of Shimron, and to the king of Akshaph. When word of Joshua's southern victories had reached the north, one man immediately went to work on getting a northern coalition put together. Now remember, we talked about this last week when Joshua was heading into what he was heading into. He was heading into Canaan's Dixie. I'm trying to give you a picture here of the battle going south. They had basically attacked the land halfway through, middle land, and so they attacked south. They were like George Tecumseh Sherman going south in the Civil War. Well, this is the people of Israel taking over the Promised Land, and so they're attacking south, and they had great success. This king that we're reading about here hears about this up in the north, and he goes, we got to do something about this. And so he gets a coalition of different kings together to do battle against Israel. So get that picture. And so Joshua is going to be dealing with this. Look at verses 2 and 3. As I find it. 2 and 3. And to the kings who were in the northern hill country, and in Arabah, south of Chinneroth, and in the lowland, and in Naphath Dor on the west, to the Canaanites in the east and the west, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, and the Jebusites in the hill country, and the Hivites under Hermon in the land of Mizpah. And so we see here that these groups are being drawn together. And these groups could not get along, but they are trying to align to fight Israel. Remember, these are groups that had fought against each other for years. They had lived in deep sin. You see that as Joshua is being used of God to lead the people of Israel to these ites, against all of these ites, it is stuff that needs to be cleaned out. And for years, God has been gracious that at some point these people would repent of their sins, and that isn't happening. And so God has to do something here. And God is wanting to do these things in our life. Remember, we've said this before, that this is a book about progressive sanctification for you and me as believers in Jesus Christ. God is constantly working to conform us to the image of His Son. Okay, I've used this picture before, but let me do it one more time because many of you are new, and I want you to get an understanding. God wants us to look like Jesus. Okay? And so we come with a bunch of baggage. We come with stuff that is a part of our life, and whatever that looks like for you. And He's constantly, until we're in glory, because some of you may go, man, it's going to be great when I don't have to deal with sin anymore. Here's where that's at, heaven. Okay, He's always going to be doing, and so this is what you and I would look like with our stuff. Maybe some of you go, I don't got 5 stuffs. I'm down to 1, I hope. All right, I don't know. But God knows. Isn't it interesting how He starts peeling the onion? You start to find out, oh, that's an issue in my life too? I thought I had this down. So this is Jesus. Not that he's bald, but let's say this is Jesus. And he has to do things. And sometimes it's painful because we like this stuff. Sometimes sin is enjoyable. And if you aren't enjoying your sin, you're really a stupid sinner. No. It's just how it is. And so he does stuff and it hurts, but he's doing that to try to get the Hittites and the Jebusites and all those things out of our lives, because that doesn't make us look like Jesus. And so he's conforming us. The Bible says there in Romans, he's conforming us to the image of his Son. All things work together for good. And that's his ultimate goal, is to make us look like Jesus. And so these stories in Joshua 11 are a picture of that, what that looks like. And so sometimes there's the big hailstones from heaven, sun standing in the sky thing, and then there's the other just plodding along in this Christian life thing. They can't get along. These groups were clans that Moses said would hate Israel. Look at this back in Deuteronomy 7. Moses said this would happen. Deuteronomy 7, 1 through 10. When the Lord your God brings you into the land, so he's telling them what's going to happen, that you're entering to take possession of, and clears away many nations before you, the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations more numerous and mightier than yourselves. And when the Lord your God gives them over to you and you defeat them, then you must devote them to complete destruction. You got to get this out of your life, whatever that thing is. And some of you know what those things are. Man, this thing's eating me alive, and I just keep flirting with it. And he's saying, I want you to get that out of my life. You shall make no covenant with them, and show no mercy to them. You shall not intermarry with them, giving your daughters to their sons, or taking their daughters for your sons. For they will turn away your sons from following me to serve other gods. Then the anger of the Lord will be kindled against you, and he would destroy you quickly. But thus shall you deal with them. You shall break down their altars and dash in pieces their pillars and chop down their Asherim and burn their carved images with fire. For you are a people holy to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for his treasured possession out of all the peoples who are on the face of the earth. Now, I love this. This is God talking to the Jewish nation. It was not because you were more in number than any other people that the Lord set his love on you and chose you. For you were the fewest of all the peoples. But it was because the Lord loves you and is keeping the oath that he swore to your fathers, that the Lord has brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you from the house of slavery, from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Know therefore that the Lord your God is God, the faithful God who keeps covenant and steadfast love with those who love him, and keeps his commandments to 1,000 generations, and repays to their face those who hate him by destroying them. He will not be slack with one who hates him. He will repay him to his face. And so this is God's talking to the people of Israel and saying, I didn't pick you because you were that big of a deal. I picked you because you were the least. And I'll tell you, there's such a beauty to watching when people attack the Jews, how much of an evidence that they are people of God. When people are anti-Semitic, it is evidence to me that they are the people of God. Of all the people, the hatred that those people receive, that we are called to bless them because they are blessed of God. But here's why they're blessed of God, because God chose to bless them. And I want you to know, Christian, American Christian today, we're blessed of God and we don't deserve it. It wasn't that God looked down and goes, you know what? They're really cute. They behave every now and then. I choose to like them. He looked at us and we were the most sorry-looking puppies in the window. And he goes, I choose that one out of all of them. I mean, look around. And then look in the mirror later, okay? Because really, honestly, that's the reality, that we don't deserve this. It's the grace of God. Look at verse 4. And they came out with all their troops, a great horde, in number like the sand that is on the seashore, with very many horses and chariots. And you heard that verse that Brother Don read as he was leading worship this morning. The whole thing of get ready, because there's going to be these powerful nations that will have horses and chariots. And he's saying that this is one of those times. This is one of those times. And they had numbers. And listen to this. Josephus, who's a Jewish historian, he estimates that there were 300,000 infantry or footmen, 10,000 cavalry horsemen, and 20,000 chariots. Josephus said that when Joshua and his military see this, they were not full of hope. They were stricken with great terror. And here's what God wanted them to remember, that I made promises to you back in Joshua chapter 1 that you need to trust me. And God's made promises to you and I in the epistles, in the letters from the Apostle Paul, in the letters of John, that God in his love has done a work. He who began a good work in you is faithful to complete it. And though you feel, maybe you've had a great week this week, amen. And maybe you've had a horrible week this week, amen. Because God's going to use those things to make you more like his son, Jesus. Look at verse 5. And all these kings joined their forces and came and encamped together at the waters of Merom to fight against Israel. So there's these communications going on between these enemies. They meet at this strategic place, the waters of Merom, and they're trying to get the upper hand. Look at verse 6. And the Lord said to Joshua, do not be afraid of them, for tomorrow at this time I will give over all of them, slain, to Israel. You shall hamstring their horses and burn their chariots with fire. So God tells them, you got nothing to worry about. By this time tomorrow. Have you ever done that, by the way, with certain deadlines? Have you ever done that? Where something's coming up and you don't like that this thing is coming up. And you go, I am 24 hours away from that thing. Have you ever had that? I've had that where you're counting down 6 more hours, whatever that thing is. I got this meeting coming up. He's saying, by this time tomorrow, they're done. God, that would be so great to rest in that. And that's what's happened here. So when you're done with the battle, here's what I want you to do. I want you to get rid of all the horses and chariots, because Isaiah 31:1. Isaiah 31:1. Woe to those who go down to Egypt for help and rely on horses, who trust in chariots because they are many, and in horsemen because they are very strong, but do not look to the Holy One of Israel or consult the Lord. Let's be people that have these different resources, but to have an understanding that ultimately our source is God. If there's some things that you're resting in completely instead of God, God wants you to get to this point. I want you to rest in me. I love that you have friends. I love that you have these different people that you draw from, but I want you to know I want to be the first one that you run to. I want you to ultimately rest and trust in me. And that's what he wanted for the people of Israel. He wanted them to rest and trust. They don't want, and also to not have dependence on ourselves. Total dependence on God. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart. Okay? Lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. He will make your path straight. Look at verses 7 through 9. So Joshua and all his warriors came suddenly against them by the waters of Merom and fell upon them. And the Lord gave them into the hand of Israel, who struck them and chased them as far as Great Sidon and Misrath Moam, and eastward as far as the valley of Mizpah. And they struck them until he left none remaining. And Joshua did to them just as the Lord said to him. He hamstrung their horses and burned their chariots with fire. He came to the place where these numerous enemies are, and Israel attacks them. They go on the offensive. They are outnumbered. They are outmanned, and they attack them. Israel chased them in 2 directions. They chased them and destroyed them until there was no survivor left. It's interesting that they attacked them exactly as God had said to. They attacked them before they were ready with their chariots and horses. They attacked them when they were in the mountains. They were attacking them in ways that they could not use the stuff that they had set up to use. And I want you to understand that God calls us to trust him, but he also calls us to use our ingenuity. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. And so that's what's going on here. What an amazing picture. Verse 10, and Joshua turned back at that time and captured Hazor and struck its king with the sword. For Hazor formerly was the head of all these kingdoms. And they struck with the sword all who were in it, devoting them to destruction. There was none left that breathed, and he burned Hazor with fire. Hazor was the one that started all this. And sometimes the start of our problems is the last to fall, but we keep fighting. You ever have that? Verse 12, and all the cities of those kings and all their kings Joshua captured and struck them with the edge of the sword, devoting them to destruction, just as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded. But none of the cities that stood on mounds did Israel burn, except Hazor alone. That Joshua burned. And all the spoil of these cities and the livestock the people of Israel took for their plunder, but every man they struck with the edge of the sword until they had destroyed them, and they did not leave any who breathed. Just as the Lord had commanded Moses, his servant, so Moses commanded Joshua, and so Joshua did. He left nothing undone of all that the Lord had commanded Moses. Utterly destroyed. I tell you, God wants us to do this with the sins that we hold on to. That we would be serious about those things, that we would devote them to destruction. And it's interesting that he only burns up Hazor. In the scriptures, you'll find here in Joshua, he burns up 3 cities. Jericho, Hazor, and another one. And as he's done that, Israel is completely obedient to the Lord, and they will be able to use these cities. But there are times when he will say, I want this burned up completely. And it was almost like an evidence to the people that are around. This is what happens. Hazor was the one that took the initiative to take on this coalition to attack us. I want them to know that out of these smoldering ashes was a group of people who didn't take God seriously, that would actually defy the living God. And there are certain habits in our life that we need to devote to destruction. There are certain sins that we can't keep flirting with. And I keep beating this drum because this is the drumbeat of the book of Joshua. Point number 2, taking land. Taking land. Look at verse 16. So Joshua took all that land, the hill country and all the Negeb, and all the land of Goshen, the lowland, and the Arabah, and the hill country of Israel, and its lowland, from Mount Halak, which rises towards Seir, as far as Bel-Gad in the valley of Lebanon, below Mount Hermon. See, all these things are listed are the promised land in the central and southern portions. All the land has been taken, and this is an incredible accomplishment. And they obeyed the word of God. I want you to see something as a pattern. When God commands Joshua to do something, he obeys it. And God gives him victory. Now that may seem like so simple of a point, but I say that there are times when God is commanding you and me to do sometimes simple things. I want you to do this. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I like this. But that isn't good for you. I don't want this for you. And there is victory in obedience. And we teach it to our kids. You ever think about that, the things we teach them in kindergarten? Like cooperation, partnership, all those things. And then as we get older, we every now and then we just stop talking about it. But cooperation is like a really good thing. You do know that. Like partnership is a really good thing. Obedience. Got that obedience is the very best way. O-B-E-D, and we learn all these things. And then we get older. It's like, yeah, I know you said obedience, but I'm older now. I'm smarter. And God goes, you've just gotten settled in your ways. And I'm saying to you, I want you to obey me. And sometimes it's the most simple thing. I want you to do this. And we can be stubborn. There's times I know there's something I should do. And I'm like, stubborn. And it's stupid. And the pattern in Joshua's life is he got up early that morning and he did it. I would venture to say there were times when Joshua wasn't in the mood to do some of this stuff. Think about that with working out. Think about that with saying no in a diet. I mean, I'm just picking little stuff that in our everyday life. But you have to believe there were times that there were people that didn't want to do some of this stuff. I mean, some of this stuff is hard. Hamstringing horses? I know there's certain people that there's certain people that go into battle. I know there's certain soldiers that they're just like, do it. And then there's other ones that are a little different. I mean, not everybody's the same. We understand that. But God calls us to obedience. This isn't my giftedness, or I don't like this. He's saying, I want you to obey me. Verse 17, the second part of verse 17. And he captured all their kings and struck them and put them to death. 31 kings gone. 31. Look at verse 18. Joshua made war a long time with all those kings. God gives Joshua victory over a long period of time. You and I look at these verses and we go, this must have been taking a few days. Let me tell you, this taking of land takes about 7 years. I say that to you because some of you are discouraged in your Christian walk. And you're going, man, I should be farther along, and maybe you should be farther along. But I want to tell you, only God knows that. But don't give up. Things didn't happen overnight, and that's okay. Remember last week we were going to talk about whack-a-mole? Certain sins you got taken care of, and then this other one comes up, and that mug pops up over there, and you're like, come on. Thought I took care of that one. Keep fighting. I like this from D.R. Davis. I do not want to get caught in soupy spiritualization here. However, it may be proper to point out that this remains one of God's patterns with his people. God's power still works among us, Philippians 2:13, not necessarily in quick flashes, but over a long time, which calls for simple, durable fidelity over such time. Even though God is at work, many days still consist of washing your face, brushing your teeth, taking out garbage, and attending class. This is why you have need of endurance. Hebrews 10:36. Amen? These are the things that as we talk with our young people with, our kids, grandkids, it's the everyday plodding along. It's an essential. William Carey said this, the great missionary. It is essential to be a plodder. When he was asked, what's the secret to your success? He said this, I am a plodder. Now that doesn't sound exciting, but it's truth. Much of life in ministry is not miracles. The sun stood still, and there's never a day like that again. Plodding along and having the beauty of the routine. I don't know if you love the beauty of the routine. Do you love that? I love going on vacation. I love, experiencing this and that, but there's a beauty to just having the everyday. God seldom allows our progress to be more than we can handle. Exodus 23, verse 29. He said this, back in Exodus he says this to them, I will not drive them out from before you in 1 year. So he's talking about the Hittites and the Girgashites and all that. Lest the land become desolate and the wild beasts multiply against you. And so what Israel might have been thinking was, hey, we're going to go into the promised land and we'll just clean house right away. And then everything will be taken care of. And that's what you might want for your Christian life. You might go, I like to get all these habits taken care of. I like to be holy. And you have it all figured out. You know what? You'd be hard to live with, by the way. And I'd be hard to live with if I got that all taken care of and you were just walking around. No, then I'd be humble. And so he's saying here, I'm not going to clean out all of those peoples because I know there's all these wild beasts that still need to be taken care of. And so slowly but surely, I'm going to help you clean house. Proverbs 13, verse 11. I think I gave that to you. Maybe I didn't. It's a really good verse. Wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase it. I know somebody very close to me that won $1.5 million in the lottery. It wasn't good for him. And some of us, you think, man, if I just got that, the statistics are it's not a good thing. And the same is true with you and me in our Christian walk. It's the day by day, plodding along. Too much success can easily ruin us. We can handle the hard times easier than the easy. By perseverance, the turtle reached the ark. Okay? It's plodding along. Look at verses 19 and 20. There was not a city that made peace with the people of Israel except the Hivites, the inhabitants of Gibeon. They took them all in battle. Remember what happened at Gibeon? Remember the Gibeonite deception? No other city wanted to make peace. These people had no love for the people of God, even though they saw these people are cleaning house. These people, the people that were set in that land, you'd think that they would have been powerful enough to defy them, but they weren't. And the only group that did it, and they did it by deception. And we see here, God is in control. For it was the Lord, verse 24, was the Lord's doing to harden their hearts, that they should come against Israel in battle, in order that they should be devoted to destruction, and should receive no mercy, but be destroyed, just as the Lord commanded Moses. Look at these verses. Proverbs 16, 4, 7, and 9. The Lord has made everything for its purpose, even the wicked for the day of trouble. Next verse. When a man's ways please the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. And then last, the heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. God can move in any heart, but he can also harden hearts. And some don't like those verses. Those are hard verses when you think about God hardening someone's heart. Look at this is way back in the verse in Genesis 15:6. And they shall come back here in the fourth generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. And what was saying was this. Back in Genesis, before all of the stuff, God was making a promise that you're going to go into a land, and there are going to be people there that have no love for God, and they are going to be wicked, wicked people. And every now and then there's moments of grace in there. There's Rahab the harlot. There's others, that the Gibeonites, that go, we want to align with you. God's with you. But most of the time, there are people that love their sin, and they're deeply involved in their sin, and they are completely given over to that sin. And God says, you want your sin? You got it. I'm allowing you in that. And that's a scary place to be. And you could go, yeah, that's so bad that Old Testament people were like that. Let me read to you something from the book of Romans. Romans chapter 1. For although they knew God, now this is talking to us, friends. These are hard verses. It's not like I get joy out of reading them, but this is the truth. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking. And their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became foolish. You ever watch that in the news? You'll watch somebody, and you'll hear somebody, I'm just amazingly wise. And you listen to them. That's kind of dumb, what you're saying. And exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. Therefore, and this is where he's talking about this, God gave them up in the lust of their hearts to impurity, to the dishonoring of their bodies among themselves. Because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie, I don't want to hear what God said, I'll exchange that for a lie, and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever, amen. For this reason, God gave them up to dishonorable passions, for their women exchanged natural relations for those that are contrary to nature. And the men likewise gave up natural relations with women and were consumed with passion for one another, men committing shameless acts with men and receiving themselves the due penalty for their error. And since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them up to a debased mind to do what ought not to be done. They were filled with all manner of unrighteousness, evil, covetousness, malice. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, maliciousness. They are gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, haughty, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, foolish, faithless, heartless, ruthless. Though they know God's decree that those who practice such things deserve to die, they not only do them, but give approval to those who practice them. What a list! That's New Testament. That's not the book of Joshua. That's not devoted to destruction in ways that you go, yeah, we've come so much farther along. That God's saying, I want you to know that if you and I aren't careful, our hearts can grow hard toward God, and we don't know when that line is. It's not like there's a certain point we get, and I'll just wait. I'll keep living like this. I'll keep acting this way. I know you say all those things and you talk about a battle. I don't want a battle. I don't want any fight. But I just want to get along with this thing, even if I'm flirting with this thing. And ultimately, the people that get in trouble are the ones that never seriously deal with this stuff. And then they're caught in something and they're going, why did I get here? And it's because they didn't say no. And I don't want to cross that line. And God in His grace is crying out in love, saying, please, get it, that I flat out love you. So in the midst of this, there's kind of a sovereign humor that goes on in these next two verses. I want you to see this. And Joshua, verse 21, and Joshua came at that time and cut off the Anakim from the hill country, from Hebron, from Debar, from Anab, and from all the hill country of Judah, and from all of the hill country of Israel. Joshua devoted them to the destruction with their cities. There was none of the Anakim left in the land of the people of Israel. Only in Gaza, in Gath, and in Ashdod did some remain. Now, you know who that is, by the way? You know who the Anakim are? They're the giants. Remember back when they were sent in the spies and they said, what do you think? And 10 came back and says, we can't beat these guys. We're like grasshoppers. There's giants in the land. And Joshua and Caleb come back, we can beat them. Come on. And they bought the 10. They bought their story. And I think God put this in here to go, all that time, for 40 years you wandered in the wilderness and you could have cleaned house. You could have beat the New York Giants. All right. You could have beat them. You didn't trust me. And isn't it interesting where the Giants, one of them ends up? In Gath. Remember who came from Gath? Goliath came from Gath. So he was from that bloodline. So you could imagine, that would be scary if you had a bunch of Goliaths. But the reality is, with God you can win. God can be trusted. Okay? Last point number 3, taking leisure. Taking leisure. This is such a good verse for you and I to have, to know that at some point that day will come. Look at verse 23. So Joshua took the whole land according to all that the Lord had spoken to Moses, and Joshua gave it for an inheritance to Israel according to their tribal allotments, and the land had rest from war. God gave Joshua all the land and rest in all the land. What a great verse. God keeps His promises. How are you doing this morning? as we head into Thanksgiving, would you stop this week at some point and take account, what has God done? Maybe that would be writing down a note, and you would take the initiative at the Thanksgiving table. Don't wait for the person that always seems to do that you'd take the initiative and you'd say, hey, we were talking about this in church the other day. I wrote down some things that I want to thank the Lord for. What a great thing. That God has given victory. And you're not cocky about it. You're not proud. You're just saying, God, I'm looking to you for that. I love this last illustration here. Remember who finally decided in America that we should have a Thanksgiving Day? A guy by the name of Abraham Lincoln. Listen to this. Probably the greatest example of persistence is Abraham Lincoln. If you want to learn about somebody who didn't quit, look no further. Born into poverty, Lincoln was faced with defeat throughout his life. He lost 8 elections, twice failed in business, and suffered a nervous breakdown. He could have quit many times, but he didn't. And because he didn't quit, he became one of the greatest presidents in the history of our country. Lincoln was a champion and never gave up. Look at this sketch of Lincoln's road to the White House. 1816, his family was forced out of their home. He had to work to support them. 1818, his mother died. 1831, he failed in business. 1832, he ran for state legislator, lost. 1832, also lost his job. Wanted to go to law school but couldn't get in. 1833, borrowed some money from a friend to begin a business, and by the end of the year, he was bankrupt. He spent the next 17 years of his life paying off his debt. 1834, ran for state legislature again, won. 1835, was engaged to be married. Sweetheart died and his heart was broken. 1836, had a total nervous breakdown and was in bed for 6 months. 1838, sought to become Speaker of the state legislature, defeated. 1840, sought to become elector, defeated. 1843, ran for Congress, lost. Right about now, I'm done, all right? 1846, ran for Congress again. This time he won. Went to Washington and did a good job. 1848, ran for re-election to Congress, lost. 1849, sought the job of land officer in his home state, rejected. 1854, ran for Senate of the United States, lost. 1856, sought the vice presidential nomination at his party's national convention, got less than 100 votes. 1858, ran for U.S. Senate again. Again, he lost. 1860, elected president of the United States. Isn't that amazing? That was in Snopes, so you know that's right. Yeah. They never lie. I don't know who's Snoping Snopes, but what a picture. And God is saying that to you and me. You may be sitting here going, I'm constantly losing. And he's saying, it's okay, because I'm doing a work. It's me, it's not you. It's Christ. Let's look to him. Let's trust him. As we go into this holiday season, there's going to be lots of things vying for our attention. Let's pray that God uses this for his glory. Let's pray. Lord, thank you again for